It's October 31st, Halloween. That means it's time for a new 31 on 31. This time, Outbreak Protocol. 31 of the best and most iconic zombie movies of all time, ranked from worst to best. Let's do this. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section if you're up for the challenge. Rank all 31 movies included in this 31 on 31. Or what are your favorites and what are your least favorites of the bunch? If you don't know, 31 on 31 is a series from the Odd Top stream. I'm not the only one doing this ranking. We've got them scheduled all throughout the entire day. I'll have links to them down below in the description card somewhere up here. Be sure to not just watch my video, check out everybody else's videos, watch, give them that runtime, comment, subscribe to their channels, all of that fun stuff. With that said, let's get started. In last place, Pet Sematary 2. Now, most of the movies on this list are here because they are classic, iconic, or well-regarded as some of the best zombie movies of all time. Other movies on this list are sequels or remakes to classic and iconic zombie movies. This, of course, is a movie that is only on the list because it is a sequel to Pet Sematary, and it's a sequel that seems like it completely misses everything that made the original movie have staying power and weight to it. It takes the mythology in a bit of a different direction, where someone is brought back even earlier in the story, an accident happens, so they try and bring the person back. But it really doesn't work, and there's so many just bad ideas in here. Like when you have zombie rape at the end, there's just like so many things that kind of happen in it that feel just completely out of place in the franchise. The horror of the original film is that it's like a story about just utter grief, and what lengths would you go to try and resolve that? And like hoping against hope, out of desperation, a dad does something that he almost certainly knows will not have a good outcome, and his sweet, innocent child turns into a monster. There's something just so horrifying and utterly, continually tragic about the whole story. Where in this one, an abusive stepfather comes back as an abusive zombie. A bully comes back as an abusive bully. Like that whole idea of something innocent coming back as something monstrous is completely lost here. So it's just shock value. It's just more for the sake of more. Not even young Edward Furlong and Clancy Brown can save this movie. Coming in at number 30, The Serpent and the Rainbow. This is a film I just didn't get into, like, at all. I have no idea what the general consensus is about this movie. All I can say is this is supposed to be a list of, 31 of the best zombie movies, so there's a lot of competition, and this is one that most zombie movies I can get into, even if I'm not, like, super into the movie. And this one just always felt at arm's length. On the positive, love Bill Pullman, so it's fun to see Bill Pullman in a movie like this. Likewise, with Alfred from Batman is in here. So some nice familiar faces that it was kind of fun to see in the film. But otherwise, it's more of a voodoo movie than it is a zombie movie. And I'm not really into any voodoo movies. Like, voodoo as a mechanism for storytelling in the mystic and the occult has just never been one of the things that I've clicked with or gotten into. And this one is like super heavy on voodoo and hallucinations and drugs and stuff like that. Likewise, the storytelling mechanism, where it's this investigation with a lot of voiceover, for me just kind of made it feel like we're at its arm's length. We're watching a report on what happened, which it's based off a book that is reporting what happened to a guy. So there's even kind of a reason that it would feel that way. But for me, that made it feel less immersive and more like a distant experience of just watching this thing kind of play out. Like I said, it just wasn't engaging for me. I didn't feel connected to the characters, the story, the mythology. And at times it felt like it was rushing through plot points, and it would linger on the trippiness and the atmosphere, like the set pieces. It was like, okay, this is a cool thing. Let's spend time here. But the actual plot mechanics were flying through them once again, so they felt distant. After I try and look up behind the scenes stuff on movies and watched the Joe Blow video, the WTF video on this film. And apparently there was a good bit of reworking of the movie and post-production and studio notes and interference and stuff like that. And I think you feel that watching the movie and the way that the story's kind of told. I will say this, one of my great fears is being buried alive. So the fact that there's a good bit of being buried alive in this, that certainly made me squirm. But that was the big thing that kind of worked for me here. Number 29, The Return of the Living Dead 2. And up until a couple weeks ago, this was the only Return of the Living Dead movie I had ever seen. I watched it, I don't even know when. 25, 20, 30 years ago. I'm old enough that the years just kind of blend together. But back in the day, I watched this one, and this movie was my only point of reference for the Return of the Living Dead movies, and I guess that was fine, but forgettable, and never re-explored the rest of the movies. Though I was mildly curious about the third one, because I guess it was like a Romeo and Juliet thing, and I'd seen the poster for it, and the lead actress in it was on the OC, but never even in watching it, up until making this video. And rewatching Return of the Dead for the first time in who knows how long, literally I don't know how long, it was totally harmless but forgettable. That we're basically doing the same thing, but less interesting. There are no memorable characters, and they made the very odd choice to have a pair of actors return as different characters, but with similar personalities. It's just an odd thing to do. And it's just a by-the-numbers zombie outbreak comedy. Just nothing about it even to comment on. Like, there's not even something in here that, like, specifically irritated me or that I could, like, unpack or anything like that. It's like, yeah, I watched it 2 weeks ago and wrote notes right after I watched it and still just have nothing to say because it's just more stuff. That's all it was. Then we have Zombie or Zombie 2 or Italian Dawn of the Dead 2, whatever you want to call it. It was a movie that, once again, was fine. I appreciated it for having some fun retro gore. There's a couple creepy elements in here, in particular how slowly the recently undead rise up. It was done in like such a specifically deliberately slowly pace, or maybe it's just all they could do, so slowly that was the thing that kind of struck me the most about the movie, how like unsettling these very slow rising zombies were. But beyond that, it just kind of felt like a generic rip-off zombie movie. An overtly exploitive one. So it's easy to forget just how gratuitous the nudity is in exploitation films from before the advent of the internet, when there was a new, easy way for people to see certain things. And so you watch a movie like this, and just out of the blue, a lady decides to go swimming for an extended period of time without any clothes on. For no reason. And there's a couple other things like this in the movie where it's like, oh, that's right, it's an exploitation movie from the 70s. That's right. It's another one that's pretty heavily into the voodoo. Once again, not of great interest to me. Another one that's kind of an investigation and a real slow burn investigation. We're kind of slowly on our way to the island, and we get a little attack with our underwater naked lady. We get to the island, and it takes a while before things get going. And once you move into the last third of it, it finally picks up. If the whole movie had kind of had the energy of the last 15 minutes, we'd shoot up this list about 15 spots. But as is, it was just kind of a movie takes too long to get going, and there's just a lot of awkward dialogue, awkward scenes in there. So to me, this didn't feel like some hidden gem that I'd missed throughout the decades. 27, Quarantine. Now, this movie, as well as Wreck, the movie it's a remake of, were first-time watches for me. As a point of reference, it's a found footage zombie movie. I'm not really into found footage movies. And essentially the reason that this movie is so far down on the list is that it is a cover movie. It is just a full-blown cover of the original version, just in English. And with the ending changed to be a little bit more generic and not quite as good. And so it has all the beats. It does everything the original one does, so it's fine. It just doesn't feel like we're getting anything new out of it. And as a found footage movie, it's a genre that is served well by having no-name faces acting in it. The immersiveness of found footage doesn't work if I see familiar actors. Love Jennifer Carpenter, huge Dexter fan. Love that she got to star in a movie like this. Also, Deborah Morgan from Dexter starring in a found footage movie immediately breaks the immersion. And I'm seeing an actress that I know very well and I've spent a lot of time watching in something else. And so it doesn't work quite as well. And there's a lot of familiar faces amongst the cast. Even the little girl, it's Joey King, who's gone on to, star in the Kissing Booth movies and a ton of other stuff over the last 15 years. And so everywhere you look, instead of just disappearing into this found footage, which creates an immersiveness when you don't recognize the people, most of the actors are familiar faces. I didn't dislike this movie at all. It was just kind of like, we didn't need this. 26th, The Return of the Living Dead, Part 3. This is a wild departure for the franchise. This time it is Romeo and Juliet as a zombie story. And the basic concept here actually is a really fun, different spin on zombie mythology. And in particular, if you're doing kind of this comedy take on zombie movies that has a different flavor, this is something fresh and new to do with it. But I think it's just really mediocre execution. It feels like a very subdued version of the concept. If you look into the behind the scenes, this is another one. I watched the Joe Blow video on it. They talk about how the studio was about to lose the rights, and so they were rushed into production and writing things on the set. Everything was done insanely fast. And once again, I think you feel that with the movie, that they had a great idea. They just didn't have the time and the money to fully, properly flesh it out. And so just on the writing side to it, the girlfriend is written to be just too stupid and horny. The basic setup for how she ends up dead and turning into a zombie, you're like, really? That's what you're going with? And this is an example of one of these movies that I saw the cassette cover at Blockbuster Hollywood Video in the mid-90s. And it's the iconic image of her, full decked out goth, the pins, needles, glass, whatever sticking out of her body. Real cool, iconic shot. And you're like, oh man, what's that movie? And you watch it, and that's only one sequence. It's one short sequence in the movie. That's not representative of what the movie's like at all. Generally speaking, really under-delivers on the promise of the premise and the poster. Number 25, Army of the Dead, the most frustrating movie on this list because it should easily be in the top 10. The elevator picture is fantastic. Vegas has been taken over by zombies and quarantined. A group of thieves are rushing in to rob it as quick as they can before the government nukes it. Fun combination of genres. There's a ticking clock, interesting imagery, fun actors in the leads, but it's almost the ultimate example of a movie where it needed a producer that would say no. But the actual plot of the movie is that there's a company that's using the heist as a cover to steal a zombie head, which completely derails the whole story and the momentum. Because there's too much plot. It doesn't even make any sense why they would do this, why there's these betrayals taking place. There's way too much zombie lore. And suddenly our hour and 40-minute quick little zombie heist movie is like 2.5 hours long. It takes over an hour before we get to Las Vegas. There's just way too much stuff going on. And it could have been easy. Like, even have a scene in the movie where they talk about how dehydrated zombies are just laying on the ground, but whenever it rains, they come back up to life. What about when our heroes are trying to get out of town, starts pouring rain, and suddenly there's zombies? They don't do that. They wrote in the movie a great sequence that they didn't put in the movie. They just told you about it. Just like insane unforced errors here. So it's a movie that has all of these glimpses of what the movie could have and should have been, and instead we get this way too convoluted, overstuffed, bloated version of the movie. 24, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. I will start things off by apologizing to Cody. I know that this was a formative film for you. It was very important that it was included on this list of 31 movies. And when I posted the list of films, apparently it is also a formative movie for many of you watching as well. It was not a formative movie for me. Once again, by this point in time on the list, I enjoy all of these well enough. For me, this is just kind of another Scooby-Doo movie. It's not better or worse than other ones. It's got all the fun and charm that you want from a Scooby-Doo story, but it's just a Scooby-Doo adventure. Not better or worse than the average, just another one of these. At feature length, even short feature length, it feels like, all right, we're going for a while now. I don't know that I needed the cat people in the back half of it, but to me, it's just a Scooby-Doo story. There's nothing beyond that of great interest to me. Certainly nothing that was like, man, this is like a iconic zombie movie. Oh, it's just another Scooby-Doo story for me. Next up, Night of the Living Dead, 1990. And this is another cover song movie.
Coming to get you, Barbara.
It is a cover of Night of the Living Dead with only a few mild changes. I would say that this one works a little bit better than Quarantine over Rec, largely because Quarantine came out like a year or two after Rec. There's no significant changes in production and what you can pull off. And it was hurt by familiar Hollywood faces in it, in the format they told. In the case of Night of the Living Dead, this is a much bigger, slicker production. And there's benefits that come with that. In particular, when you're doing zombie makeup, you're doing action, production value, money matters. And in that regard, this movie does have some advantages by being in color, the Tom Savini direction and makeup. It's all improved, of course. And they do alter the lead woman in the movie quite a bit. She is much more of a fighter in this one and has more to do, in particular in the end of the film, all leading to a different ending that pays off what she's doing in a different way than what the shocking ending of the original did. But at the end of the day, it's a cover movie. That it's kind of fun to have this alternate version that's slicker, production is advanced. But at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything that does something dramatically different from the classic original. So it just feels like a slicker produced cover of a classic.
Night of the Living Dead wasn't a very good experience for me.
28 years later, another one of the more disappointing films on this list. Not a bad movie, but a disappointing movie. And so much of that comes down to it's a movie that it felt like they had too many ideas in every regard. This is a film that feels like it shifts its protagonist midway through the movie, shifts its focus of the plot midway through the movie. It shifts its tone for every act. You get a totally different tone, totally different editing style. The whole movie just feels like it's shuffling between different ideas, styles, and approaches. And so it just didn't come off as cohesive to me. And like it was cool to start to explore this world. I liked the idea of where would it be 28 years later, and it's been quarantined, its own culture sorts to develop there, and there's kids that have been born there that only know this world. And so the outside world is this foreign thing. There's all these things. That was cool. There's some of the brutality to it. And then it can do things that are kind of thoughtful. And how would people respond to death and adapt to this world? And what would that look like? And misunderstandings of other. But it's like each piece was kind of cool. And then merged together with something else where the pieces just didn't feel like they fit together. The most glaringly obvious example of this being the last scene in the movie, which, first off, as someone from the United States, I didn't understand the references at all. Like, I didn't get what it was going at all. I didn't know who the guy was or anything, so I had to learn about that afterwards. But also, stylistically, it's like we're suddenly in the Power Rangers. Like, out of nowhere, we're doing, like, Power Rangers flips and bright colors, and it's like, what are we in? The first act of the movie is like intercutting with like war footage, like, and it doesn't do that for the rest of the film. So it's like a movie that just felt all over the place. And there's a bunch of things that are well done, but it's like the parts are greater than the whole. 21, The Crazies OG. An interesting premise and a different perspective on an outbreak kind of movie. It tackles many of the same kind of themes that you find in the other George Romero zombie films, with this built-in sense of dread and doom. Like, as it goes along, your stomach is just being turned more and more into knots by everything taking place and your frustration. I think that this one is easily the weakest of Romero's films on this list because of the structure. It's essentially broken into 3 different stories: families fighting to escape, government trying to contain, and soldiers fighting civilians. And for most of the runtime, they're separate stories, obviously all related to the same event and same town, but they're detached stories. And most of the action in the movie takes place with the soldiers fighting with generic civilians. So it's just kind of like noise. It's showing you the chaos, but you're not invested in it because you don't know the soldiers or the people, the civilians being shot or battling. And that disconnect, I think, kind of holds the movie back. It's most effective when you move into the third act and the action, the soldiers, the government stories all kind of come together, and all of a sudden the action has specific and personal meaning for characters that we're invested in. That's just not the case for the first 70% of the runtime. Like, watching it, I was like, I can see the movie here that I would have really liked that's on the same level as these other Romero films on this list, but it's just not calibrated. Bringing us into the top 20, The Return of the Living Dead. And this is a movie with a very interesting kind of backstory that in its own way, it's a sequel to the original Night of the Living Dead, but only kind of. So essentially, the co-writer of Night of the Living Dead and Romero split and went different ways, and each of them kind of retained certain rights to the Living Dead franchise. Obviously, Romero went on to continue writing or making the movies in the Dead series. And then the other writer kind of wrote a book that was his own sequel to Night of the Living Dead. This is kind of an adaptation of that book, in which case it's kind of its own alternate timeline sequel to Night of the Living Dead, in which case in the movie itself, the way they acknowledge it is to say the events of the first movie were real events that happened, but were and the movie existed, and the movie was fictionalizing a real event that happened, and something like that. Kind of a fun meta way to comment on the complexity of the rights and everything like that. The movie in and of itself is like a fun enough little high energy zombie movie. It's not one that had anything for me that like really cut through, but it was enjoyable. It was fun. In particular, the characters have a lot of zest and pop to them. There's good chemistry and banter between a number of the little pairings that we have in there. There's just some wild, crazy characters like the singer lady or whatever's going on with that. Just, it's all very high energy, as many have called it, punk rock zombie outbreak movie that fit perfectly in the middle of the 80s. But like for me, it wasn't one that had something specific that hooked me, that I'd be like, that was the thing about it that I really loved and got excited about. Number 19, Night of the Creeps. And to be perfectly honest, pretty much from here out on the list, these are all movies that had something about them that I was like really excited about, or that was really fun, or was a pleasant surprise to kind of discover the movie and watch it for the first time. This is a list designed to be some of the best zombie movies of all time. So inherently, you can have something number 19 and it's still amongst a list of the best. Like, I keep going back to that idea, but just to be clear, don't think because it's number 19, it wasn't things about this movie that I was really excited about. And like the next 8, 9 on this list, they're all really close, different day of the week. Some of it's just a matter of this is one of the first movies I watched and I've only seen it one time. And other ones I watched more recently, so maybe a little bit recent. But I really enjoyed a lot of it. I really enjoyed the movies. So for this one, it was like, I had no idea what to expect. All I had heard is that this movie influenced James Gunn's Slither. That was my only point of reference for the movie. And you watch it, and the first thing that happens is there's these weird little aliens running around, and you see their alien butts, and we're in a 1950s monster movie, and suddenly we're in a 1980s party movie. I'm like, what on earth is this bizarro movie that I'm watching? It's like a zombie movie plus alien invasion plus college movie plus romance plus Tom Atkins cop investigation, all soaked in the 80s. It's such a weird genre blender. All culminating with, the sorority girl with a flamethrower torching dudes at the end of it, with a guy in a tux killing zombies with a shotgun. It's wild. If it maintained that level of insanity, of the chaos, that imagery throughout, it might even be a little bit higher on the list. It's not quite that interesting throughout the beginning and the middle section of the movie as it is at the weirdo beginning and the end of it. But, like a movie that was just like a true, product of the 80s. You could only make this movie in the 80s. To, Tom Atkins doing classic horror movie Tom Atkins.
I got good news and bad news, girl. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
A lot of spotty, low-budget effects, but also that's the charm of a movie like this. Movies like this, and several others we're going to talk about in the next 15, are what for me makes these 31 on 31s like an important part of annual tradition for me. I sat out the last one that they did, but I started doing this one, and immediately watch a movie like this is like, yes, I'm watching this movie because of this 31 on 31. And there's a bunch of first-time watches in here. It's like, finally, I'm watching this movie that was a blank spot, a cult classic, a classic of the genre, whatever you want to call it. That's what makes these 31 on 31s very cool for me, is to finally get to watch some of these movies that I've missed. 18, Planet Terror. This one is always so tricky for me because I want to like it more than I actually do. There's a ton of stuff that I do love about it, and there's a handful of choices that just kind of hold it back. It's never as good as I want it to be. And of course, the obvious thing here, good old-fashioned Robert Rodriguez over-the-top action, but doing schlocky zombie action in a movie that, because of the grindhouse format, it just allows him to have fun without worrying about logic or mainstream slickness. He can just go for these wild, absurd ideas. And the pure simplicity of, let's chop off Rose McGowan's leg and put a machine gun there, and you never forget it. It looks great on a trailer. It's just so memorable. It's such a weird pairing. It's nonsense. But you can pull it off in a movie like this it's a grindhouse film, obviously. And so it gets away with so much because that's the rules it's set for itself from the beginning. The thing and then, of course, fun, lively characters, the Jeff Fahey working on his barbecue sauce, incorporating that into a character, just trying to find the perfect recipe and getting blood in there and all this stuff. So, a perfect little spice character for a movie like this. But there's a few things about it that just, I just don't like. The gross out, nasty, pus, exploding nodule body horror, I just don't like that stuff. And then likewise, this kind of leans into the grindhouse gimmick side of things. It leans so hard into the grindhouse gimmick where it's we'll just remove a reel from the movie and skip over plot points. I get it, you watch the movie and maybe they'd miss a reel or something would happen, so you just keep watching but you made your movie and you just cut part of it out. I don't like that. It's so frustrating because there's so many things that I love about this schlock fest. Next up, Re-Animator. This is a movie that I've seen 2 times. I watched it the first time when I was living in an apartment with my dad, which would have been 2001 or 2002, and then I didn't rewatch it until prepping this video. And the reason I mention that specifically is that this is a movie that I didn't rewatch. I only watched it the one time as just a movie viewer, but it stuck with me. I remembered it quite well. And most movies that I just watch randomly once, I can't normally tell you where I watched a movie for the first time in 2001. Even movies that I'm very fond of. But Re-Animator is such an odd, quirky, wacky film that despite watching it one time, I remembered all these scenes, these sequences. I mean, certainly the end of it, it's so crazy and wacky and inappropriate that it's tough to forget this head and what this head does to the lady on the table, Barbara Crampton on the table. It's so shocking. So many movies are slick mediocrity. That's what mid means to me. Slick mediocrity. Big budget, but it's fine. And this is a movie that's got plenty of rough edges, plenty of things that are certainly not normally accessible, questionable ideas that can you do them in the year 2025. But all those rough edges, all the insanity, the quirkiness, the oddities, the over-the-top Jeffrey Combs performance and everything, that's what makes it stick. That's what makes it remain in your head after you've seen it over 20 years later, despite it not being like, and that to me is something that's so important for a movie to be able to do that. And some of the movies kind of lower on this list where, I've seen Return of the Living Dead Part 2 multiple times and watched it more recently than this film, and I just didn't really remember anything about it. Just nothing stuck, nothing cut through. Re-Animator cut through. Also, rewatching it right around when I watched Pet Sematary, it struck me of like how many oddly specific things, similarities there are to Pet Sematary. Obviously, very different movies. But there's the cat, there's the final twist, there's other things about it. There's a surprising number of parallels between these two very different movies about the dead being brought back. Number 16, 28 weeks later. This was a first-time watch. I actually didn't watch it until a couple weeks ago, so I saw 28 years later before I watched 28 weeks later. But I didn't really know what to expect on a plot level. I didn't even realize Jeremy Renner was in the movie. So I just knew Robert Carlyle was in it. I just knew his face. That's all I knew about it. So for me, this was actually a pretty big, pleasant surprise. I would say that it absolutely is a more mainstream, straightforward horror film than the other two 28 films. But if you know my taste in movies, that's not really a negative. But yeah, it's just like a chase movie in an alternate way for a breakout to happen in the context where you're trying to contain it in this very delicate ecosystem. Thought it was interesting. I had no idea that what was going to happen with Robert. I thought he was the main character. Was going to be the main character throughout the entire movie in the traditional father hero sense. So maybe even in that regards that I didn't. All of it was unexpected for me. That it's a film that even our everyone that you think is going to be the lead character is in fact not the lead character. Oh, Rose Byrne is in it too. There's several people, and it was like, oh wow. I had no idea that these people were in this movie. Even was it Imogen Poots? Is that her name? I don't know how to pronounce her name properly. I hope I said that right. There's so many people. It's I didn't realize they were in this movie. Oh, Idris Elba's in it? I'm still doing it. So it was all pleasant surprises. I literally only knew Robert Carlyle was in it. And choices matter. And so so many zombie movies are nihilistic and end with everybody dies, nobody gets away. And this one had a little bit more of a hopeful vibe to it, if you want to call it that. Yeah, I think there's a few things in the logic of how this outbreak happened. There's all these things that kind of play out with it where it's okay, that was too stupid. You needed to spend a little bit more time to explain how that happened to me and not just kids are dumb. But otherwise, I just a well-made, edge-of-your-seat zombie survival thriller with clear objectives and motives and sacrifices that you get the feels at the choices they make and stuff like that. Number 15, Wreck. This is another first-time watch. I mentioned that before when we talked about Quarantine, the American remake of Wreck. And I'm not, generally speaking, a big found footage person, but I think this is done enough in a way to where it serves the immersive nature of the storytelling. That you're following this bubbly, mousy, excited news reporter with some firefighters into a situation that quickly turns out to be something very different from they expected. And the found footage aspect of it just puts you in the situation. It immerses you in the moment. The film is an hour and 20 minutes long, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's able to have an intro, build some mystery, build the tension, and then get very chaotic in the third act, and then the credits roll before I get motion sickness from a camera doing this too much. I think the nature of it, it's a story that works better because of the format. It's a story that I don't know that it plays nearly as well if you don't have a mechanism like this that puts you right there in the space. If this is our found footage zombie movie, it's a good found footage zombie movie that's able to win me over as someone that's not crazy about this kind of thing. Number 14, Braindead or Dead Alive, the Peter Jackson film. One of my absolute favorite things about Hollywood in the last 30 years is that Peter Jackson went on to do Lord of the Rings and do such beloved, faithful adaptations that extraordinarily mainstream, normal people absolutely adore. And if you go, what was his resume? What was Peter Jackson up to that got him the job of doing Lord of the Rings, adapting Tolkien? Braindead, Meet the Feebles, just the most like insane, bonkers, offensive, ultra gory, gross out, nasty movies. I love that. Peter Jackson obviously has tremendous versatility because he made the movie Braindead and 10 years later won an Oscar or many Oscars for Return of the King. But man, what a bonkers movie. I didn't know what to expect. This was a first time watch. I was aware of the third act and I'd seen a lot of footage of the third act and the lawnmower and I'd seen that stuff. But I had no idea what the beginning of the movie was. The movie's very famous and memorable for this ultra-violent, bonkers, over-the-top, unhinged third act. But this movie was off the hinges way before the lawnmower came out. This thing, just from the get-go, with the relationship with the mother, as the mother's dying and like rotting away, the icky, gross-out bits, the way that he tries to cover all of this up, it is just so bizarre and weird. And it still managed to have like this emotional current and an arc for our lead character in his relationship with his mother and understanding what happened in the past and everything. And the blending of true horrific stuff with like some human emotion, it's the sort of thing like, well, this shouldn't work, but it kind of does. And once again, you're talking about movies like that leave a mark, an impression that you see it once and you can't forget it. This one. 13, Zombieland 2, Double Tap. And I know for a lot of people, this was a disappointing sequel. I really enjoyed it in the theater, and I really enjoyed it rewatching it a few weeks back. It might not have the staying power of the original film. It doesn't have that impact. And I'm talking a little bit about the importance of cutting through, staying power, and like I feel like a movie like Re-Animator has more staying power than Zombieland 2. That I remembered Re-Animator from watching it 15 years earlier than I watched Zombieland 2. I remembered it better than I remembered Zombieland 2. But also, that doesn't take away also rewatchability, enjoyment, general flavor, taste, all those things. I just watched the film and I really enjoyed it. Like, it's more time with characters that I like, in a style that I enjoy, in a world I want to play around in. That's what I want from a sequel. And that's what this movie delivered. Rewatching it, I was like, yeah, we're back in this world, and yeah, the emotional hook isn't quite as strong this time, but like none of that takes away from, do I enjoy this? We'll talk about this in a little bit, but you know, these are the writers that went on to do Deadpool. So this is like bringing that meta, self-aware energy to the zombie genre. And you get like more of that here, and like Zombie kill of the year. There's so many great little bits that kind of play out when you find the other versions of characters. I just had fun with the entire thing. It's just, that's what these movies are. Like, they're really fun 21st century slick zombie comedies. So I just enjoyed it. 12, The Crazies, the remake. There aren't a lot of times where I dramatically prefer a remake over the original. In this case, that seems to be what happened here. And I think some of that is they streamlined the story and turned it purely into a zombie survival story. And because of that, I was just a lot more invested. The problem I had with the original, as I mentioned before, is that it had these different stories. One was very political, one was very action, one was very dramatic. And it felt like it's pulling itself in too many directions. This one just said, let's do one thing really well. And so it's slick, 21st century zombie survival action. We build up the military taking over in the first 30 minutes. There's investigation, there's escalation, and then it's just we're on the run until the credits roll. It's got the premise of the Crazies. It's got a little pinch of Jaws at the beginning of it with the mayor not wanting to shut things down. And then we're just in action mode. Love Timothy Olyphant. That's probably another big thing that kind of helps the movie. Seeing him in this type of role is very much something that I'm interested in. There's more action. There's more horror. There's a lot less politics. There's a lot less of the paranoia aspect to it. But for me, that was fine because it picked its lane and it did its lane really well. Streamlines our story. And so for me, it's an example of a remake that, because it was able to pick its focus, it worked more effectively. 11, Overlord, the Nazi zombie movie. For me, I like to believe that this is John Walker's origin story. This is how he served in the military before becoming official Captain America 2 and then the legendary U.S. agent. This, to me, is a movie that it's just a classic, fun concept. That it's been in video games, in Call of Duty games, for 15, almost 20 years or whatever. And someone finally made a movie out of it. It's not as good as I'd hoped it would be. And I don't know if that's a budget thing or if they just miscalibrated it just a little bit. Because it's not as zombie heavy as you want. And there's a few things that you could have done to make it more satisfying. But you're watching a war movie that turns into a zombie movie. And it's got nasty body horror. It's got killing of zombies. It's got mad scientist experiments, boss fights. All the stuff that you get in Nazi zombie video games, you have it in this movie. Just maybe not in the correct proportions. If the proportions were a little bit better, this would have gone into the top 5 for me because just the idea of Nazi zombie movie is just so fun to me. Also, even to what I kind of mentioned before, a lot of familiar faces before they were familiar faces. So, of course, Wyatt Russell has had much more success since this came out. Joseph Quinn is also at the beginning of this movie. There's like a number of MCU faces appear in this one. This is one of these ones that I really like what's there. It's not that I have specific things I dislike about it. It's just, once again, that calibration. If it had been calibrated a little bit more towards zombies and a little less overt World War II, all of a sudden, we're moving up this list a bit more. Bringing us into the top 10, Pet Sematary. To be perfectly clear, this is a movie I didn't grow up watching. It is a movie that has just such a great central premise to explore the desperate places that grief and trauma can take you. And at its core, just has a few different really horrifying concepts. The idea of a parent losing a child is one of the greatest horrors that one can face. And it's the fear every parent has that's real. And in the movie, it's a car. It's just the simple thing that can happen, that you're just out of reach to save your child. It's just truly horrifying. And then what if there was the temptation to bring the child back? What if there was a mechanism to bring it back, even though it won't? You shouldn't. You know the dire consequences that can come with it. And so it just has this equally horrifying thing of you do that and your innocent, pure child comes back as a monster. There's something in it that is just so compelling and dark, and the catastrophic places that grief can take you. So there's the central idea here is really good. Most of the characters aren't so great. There's a few that do kind of cut through. Judd, of course, is the standout character, with just Fred Gwynn bringing in just such his voice, of course, pops and cuts through, but just the accent, the speech patterns, what he's saying, he just adds this extra dynamic that makes for a memorable character. And of course, for totally different reasons, Zelda is just so unsettling with the makeup and everything about it just gets under your skin. I don't think the two parents are interesting. I think both of them are pretty dull and lifeless. And there's a few things about it that are just kind of dated or don't hold up well, or just odd choices. I think throwing the Ramones in there, doesn't matter if it's your favorite band or whatever, I don't think the Ramones fit the tone of this movie. It was like out there in left field. And when Stephen King shows up at a funeral, when I watch it with my buddy, we both started laughing because it's just like, Stephen King jump scare. But at the same time, some of those rough edges are also kind of the charm that, Hollywood movies these days, big Hollywood movies, are sometimes too slick, and you like the rough edges that you get from the 80s. Number 9, World War Z. Now, this is an example of one of the rare examples where I actually read the book long before I saw the movie. So I read the book World War Z back in 2005, and then I didn't watch the movie when it came out just because it came out in a season of life where I was very busy, newborn kids, things like that. So I didn't watch this movie for the first time until last year, and I just kind of watched it at random because someone sent it to me in my fan mail, and then I rewatched it for this video. And for a decade, I'd heard a number of people disappointed by the film. So I went into this one with all sorts of I don't know what to make of everything, kind of going, all the discussion about it. And so when I watched it, I appreciated the fact that basically it is exactly what it is. It is the blockbuster treatment of the genre, of the zombie outbreak genre, that almost every other movie on this list has a budget 1/10 the budget of this film. And finally, Hollywood went, this is a red hot genre. Let's do the version of it that's this big. And the movie itself has a fairly bare bones plot about an investigation, but it's built around the set pieces. That the climax is the least exciting of the 5 set pieces. The rest of the movie, it's like the destruction of a city at the beginning, and then escaping in the rain as a plane is taking off. And then we've got a city that's walled in as it collapses and zombies scale the walls. And we have a sequence in a plane of a zombie outbreak from a plane. All of that, when you phrase it that it's zombie action on a scale we've never seen before. For me, as entry-level PG-13 zombie movie, a zombie movie made for people that don't like zombie movies. Of the movies on this list, my wife watched almost none of them with me, except just a few of them. And one of them she watched was World War Z, and she's like, I actually kind of like that one. So, right, because it's a zombie movie that's really more of an action movie. It's a disaster movie that happens to have zombies in it. I'm okay with that. And it had, like I said, the spectacle on a scale that's so much bigger than the vast majority of zombie films. Next up, One Cut of the Dead. This is a Japanese zombie horror comedy. I had no idea what I was watching when I clicked on it. There was a paragraph at the beginning, the summary. There's 1-sentence summary. When I clicked on it to watch it for this video, I didn't know why they included it on the list. I didn't hear about it when it came out. No one had mentioned it to me in the several years since it came out. Clicked on it knowing almost nothing. And About 30 minutes into it, this movie was easily in the bottom 10 on this list. I was kind of confused by what I was watching and wasn't sure how they'd be able to sustain the film for its runtime. And then you start to figure out what the movie is you're actually watching. And by the end of it, I was like, man, that's a top 10 for me. I really dug that. That was nice. And it's a great example of a movie that kind of requires patience. It demands patience from the audience. The less you know and the more patience you have going into the movie, the better your experience will be. And it's the sort of film that it only worked for me kind of because I didn't know what I was watching, was kind of confused and frustrated by the beginning of it, and then ultimately it was like, oh wow, that was fun. I'm so glad I didn't know. I'm so glad I was kind of irritated by the beginning of the movie because it pays off so well by the end. It's because of that, it's difficult for those of you who haven't seen, it's difficult for me to talk about it because I don't want to spoil that experience for you, except to say that the movie is designed to be an unreliable narrator all throughout. And it reframes itself and keeps messing with you all throughout the whole movie. And for me, it paid off wonderfully by the end. 28 days later, one of the movies that was responsible for the zombie craze of the zeros that led to Dawn of the Dead, Walking Dead, all these things that became cultural phenomenon. Like zombie movies weren't really a big thing in the 90s, like at all. And then they kind of exploded. One of those movies making it happen was 28 Days Later, and just kind of reinvigorated the genre by making zombies much more aggressive than they'd been before, by having kind of this lo-fi, gritty, grimy aesthetic to the entire film. And just even in its combination of ideas that weren't brand new to the genre, but really leaning into a lot of what has kind of defined the genre, especially in like the Walking Dead era. There's a lot of similarities, obvious similarities between 28 Days Later and Walking Dead, in particular the beginning of Walking Dead. But with the idea of sometimes the monsters aren't actually the biggest monsters out there. Of course, also a movie that really put Cillian Murphy on the map. Of course, gone on to star in billion-dollar making Oppenheimer and winning Oscars for it. And you go back, what really put him on the map? This movie. And so a film that for me, easily the best of the 28 films is the original one. And the one that I think both has artistic merits, but enough focus that it doesn't lose itself in its flourishes. 6, Day of the Dead. This is another movie like Re-Animator that I'd only seen once before doing my watch for this video. I saw it in 2004, 2005, actually at my brother's house. And once again, it's a film that while I didn't rewatch it, it's a movie that I remembered it. It stuck with me. Once again, that idea of I don't normally remember where I watched a movie when I watched the movie 20 years ago, but that's what happened with this film, that it just has that staying power and tells such a distinct, harrowing story that remains in your mind. In the case of this one, it's just an endlessly tense and bleak film that's virtually devoid of hope, but also at the end surprisingly hopeful, where while it is a movie that the zombies are this gigantic threat, they're very present, they're slowly dwindling the numbers of the humans, also the actual conflict of the movie, the thing that causes everything to collapse and crumble, is man's inability to work together. Man's inability to help one another, to understand one another, to communicate in a healthy fashion, and the power vacuum that erupts, the secrets, the lack of trust. That's ultimately what was their undoing that caused this whole thing to collapse. And even like the main villain in it, the human villain, is such a deplorable, selfish, power-hungry lunatic that 20 years later, I remembered this guy. Of course, his death is one of the most iconic practical kills of all time. So I remember that taking place and happening to him. But like to me, this is George Romero tackling ideas that were present right there in Night of the Living Dead. Very similar themes about lack of communication, not working together, being their undoing. This tells that story once again, but painted on a much larger canvas with better effects and everything like that. And just that original trilogy of George Romero zombie films, I think still are kind of the gold standard. Bringing us into the top 5, the original Night of the Living Dead. And in so many ways, here George Romero invented the genre as we know it. The concept of zombies and the word and other things like that predated the film, but this kind of idea of a zombie outbreak, the survival horror that's combined with action, themes about man's inability to work with man, the idea that sometimes man is his own worst enemy, the shock ending, like all of the elements that are in here, the idea of where people hole up in some place to try to survive, trying to find the right place, what's the best strategy, all of these things that have become the staples, the checklist for the genre, they're present in this movie. Like you watch this movie and you're literally watching the invention of all of the tropes that have been overplayed in the genre and have appeared in so many of the movies on this list. So, obviously it's been done with more sophistication, better technology, but this is the original. And this is another one I've only watched a couple times before. I don't remember whether I've seen it 2 times before, 3 times. I don't remember. Haven't seen it in a while. But rewatching it, outside of being black and white in the zombie effects, the storytelling, it's the same way you would tell this story today. It's the same sort of final twist that you'd have in the movie today. It's not it's actually like not actually primitive. It's like a movie that really was ahead of its time. There's a reason that it became a classic, iconic film that has inspired a whole genre. Because George Romero kind of cracked the code way, way back in the 1960s. Number 4, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I find it absolutely fascinating how certain movies end up being kind of these hubs for future talent. And it is absolutely astounding to me that this movie was directed by Zack Snyder and written by James Gunn, the two people that in the next 2 decades would take over DC universes. And people go, well, I mean, James Gunn's script was reworked. Whatever. He's the credited screenwriter. I don't know how similar, how different it is. Enough of his work was in this movie that he's the person that was credited for the film. But Zack Snyder is at his best when he is a visceral visual storyteller. When he's working with a strong screenwriter, a focused story, you just get a high-octane, exciting, thrilling film. And that's what this is to me. Obviously, we're in the top 4, and there's another movie called Dawn of the Dead that has not been brought up yet. To me, the idea of Dawn of the Dead is kind of the quintessential zombie movie concept. Plays great in a video game called Dead Rising as well. There's just so much to play around with the concept. And this is a remake that takes the basic premise, but it's not a cover. It does something totally different with the idea of zombie apocalypse, zombie outbreak. We're at the mall. It is this 21st century spin on it. The characters and character arcs are all quite different. And like the character you kind of hate the most at the beginning, CJ, turns out to be like my favorite character by the end of the movie because they give him a little bit of an arc. There's characters that are irritating, they're selfish, there's the unlikely hero, all done with 21st century energy, polish, editing, effects, and Zack Snyder visuals. Just a rock solid, high energy zombie film. I'm not really going to talk about it here, but if you're wondering where I would put Shaun of the Dead, I think I would put Shaun of the Dead right here. It's a great zombie movie. It's a great Edgar Wright movie. It's a great comedy. It works on all the different levels. That's the brilliance of Edgar Wright, is that it succeeds at all of the different genres and doesn't compromise any of them. Real quick, before we go into the top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section if you're up for the challenge. Rank all 31 films. Otherwise, let me know what are some of your favorites. What are some of the ones that you don't like so much? Tell me all of that fun stuff down below. Also, this is a series for the Autop stream, so there are several other of these videos you need to check out. I'm going to try and put cards up here. I'll definitely have a pinned comment. Things down below. Check out all of the other rankings and how there are different opinions on the movies. Like, subscribe, comment, watch to give them the watch time. Don't just click on it and click away, because that actually hurts their videos, but actually watch it for a little bit, hear their opinions, whatever your favorite, least favorite movie is, figure out where they placed them, all that fun stuff. Support the other channels, please. In third place, Zombieland. Just a wildly energetic and entertaining zombie movie with a cast with great chemistry. There's just a series of things that came together to just kind of craft a super memorable zombie apocalypse comedy. The foundation for all of that is the script from the guys that went on to do the Deadpool movies. And when you watch this movie, that connection makes a ton of sense. And it's just such a fresh and different spin on a genre. And for that matter, it's just a fresh and different spin on kind of comedy and being meta in a way that was very ahead of the curve. This movie came out 6-7 years before Deadpool came out, and it has that same exact stuff. It's super quotable. It's like, even having seen it many, many different times, watching it for the first time with my son, there's so many little bits where it's still so fresh and so funny. The Bill Murray bit is just fantastic. And it's just random enough to keep you on your toes. I mean, if I were to have like some even minor like quibbles with it, it's like the third act isn't super impactful, but that's almost the point of the movie. It's a road trip buddy movie. It's about family coming together. It's not about plot. It's not a plot movie. So the third act, like, you get a big showdown and the big rescue and everything, but that's secondary to the fact that they realize that they need each other and they want to be together. And that's the answer to it. Because it's a found family movie. It's a hangout movie. It's not a plot movie. And that's what makes it so different from every other movie on this list. That you almost expect something that from the movie that the story hasn't demanded. That's fascinating. And that's kind of why I like this movie so much. Our runner-up, Train to Busan. Full disclosure, I watched this for the first time last night. This is a movie that people have been telling me is awesome for 9 years now, but in a genre where there are so many movies with similar flavor of survival, zombie outbreak, it still found a way to be different and show things that I hadn't seen before. And, you know, it has the idea of sometimes man's inability to communicate with each other is their own worst enemy. Man is sometimes as just big of a monster as the monsters themselves. That's all in here. But it also is able to do so much of it in just like a new way, and finds a context to where the zombies feel horrifying and dangerous in a new way. Some of the visuals of it mimic what we saw a bit of in World War Z, of the zombies almost becoming true waves of zombies just rushing forward. But World War Z did it on such a large scale of cities that it felt so much less personal. And as soon as you tell the story on such a small, tighter scale of we're on a train, we're at a train station, and everyone that's surviving, I know who they are. Or these people, I'm following these specific people, and I'm invested in these specific people. It makes these visuals of the walls and waves of zombies following after them and tripping over each other and piling on top of each other. It just feels so different in that context. And it's a story that is able to get back to just a character arc. It's kind of the classic one of the dad that does care. He's just working so much. And as it goes through, he becomes the hero that he needs to be. Like a just classic character arc where it allows characters to make sacrifices that matter. It's not just nihilistic. It's not cynical, but it's dark and it's an apocalypse. And so your heart is ripped out time and time and time again, all throughout the movie, but it's not cynical and it's not nihilistic. And so that goes a long way for someone like me. And it just hit all the right notes. It played out things just different enough and provided the characters you hated. And there's the payoff, setup, payoff, heroic moments, tragic moments, all of it. In visuals, like I just haven't seen them like this before. Having seen a lot of zombie movies, but I hadn't seen this before. So it's one of the best of all time. But coming in at number 1, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, the OG, and the movie that, when combined with Night of the Living Dead, really established all of the tropes of the genre. If Night of the Living Dead is the small-scale version of it, this is where you start to get the bigger version with more spectacle, action, scope, and size to it. Between the two films, the genre is laid out. And if because of the scale, the size, the black and white, Night of the Living Dead plays like a great demo tape, a great prototype, this is the full encapsulation of Romero's vision for the genre. As I mentioned before, the idea of going to a mall, I think, just provides so much opportunity for fun to play around with everything. And the movie is kind of really does paint on such a big canvas that it takes us 20, 30 minutes to get to the mall because we're watching society collapse, that we're in a newsroom and you're seeing like they're trying to figure out what to do. When are we going to flee? Should we flee? Should we just abandon this? We're watching police officers that are trying to clear buildings and the chaos that's erupting inside of these buildings. And you have members of families that are like, just don't like, what do we do? And police officers like, wait, you're skipping out. You're skipping out. Are you stealing this? Like, who cares? Society's collapsing. And you're finally seeing the size of it. Even this movie was made a fairly limited budget almost 50 years ago, and it still feels like you're seeing a world collapse. And it had so much more action than I remembered it happening. This is a movie I used to watch all the time. Like way back in the day, I watched it all the time. And then my copy of the DVD got stolen in December of 2007. So I don't know that I've seen it since 2007, despite having seen it so many times before that. And it is so non-stop action for like the first hour and 15 minutes. And then it slows down and kind of does a montage in there once they finally cleared the mall and established a few things and they get it set into their patterns of life. It has a little bit of a lull there, but man, it is so action-packed for a movie for the 1970s. Got great classic old school Tom Savini effects. So like for me, this is like the standard. Like this is the movie that like they cracked the code. This is what a zombie movie is. This is how you do it. And there's all sorts of ideas in it about what does it mean, the difference between living and surviving, or just surviving, and the different responses from different people, the chaos. It's all in there. George Romero really did crack the code and understood the zombie genre and laid the game plan for everybody, the roadmap for everybody way back in the day, over 40 years ago, almost 60 years ago, almost 50 years ago. He figured it all out with his trilogy of movies. So it comes in at number 1. Be sure to check out everybody else's movies. I can't even put thumbnails from all of them here because I can only put 3 of them, and there's now enough of us that we got more than 3 other people participating. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV.